Interest? Are there any? No, I'm just myself. The first item is on my patch. I'll be handing over to my vice chair and moving to the back of the room after I've said a couple of words. Okay. So 5 onwards, yeah, planning applications, item 5. So I'll hand over to Vince now. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Item 5 is the land to the south of Nook Lane, Western under Redcastle, Shropshire. It's for the erection of a building for a private horse riding practice and associated works to include a change of use on the land. We do have 3 speakers on this. Third speaker is the Chairman of Priest Parish Council, which will be led by our solicitor James. Then we will have Paul Wynne as the local member, and then Darryl Wright, who will be speaking for. So, James.
Thank you, Chair. Following to statements on behalf of Priest Parish Council. Dear sirs.
Oh, hold on. My fault. Get my ducks in a row. We probably should have the presentation first and then go into the speakers. That's me not paying attention to myself for a change. Bring back just yeah. Well, he's still there. Presentation first. Apologies, Philip.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Right, this application, as you indicated, is for erection of a building for private horse riding, practice and associated works to include change of use of land on land to the south of Nook Lane, Western under Redcastle. There are no updates on this application. Members will be aware of the site, most of you having visited the site earlier this morning. The application is presented to committee for the reasons as set out in section 3.1 of the officer report. I'll now run through the slides. The first slide to my left is the existing site plan. Sorry, my mouse isn't working. Site plan, and the one to the other side is the proposed site plan. We were on site this morning. Here's where the map cursor is now, is where the existing stable is on site, and we stood alongside this and viewed the site and the 2 closest dwellings. Miami Cottage to the one side here. This is it here, and that's the foundations of the garage, which you notice on the site, which isn't actually constructed yet. And there was another dwelling here that looks into the site and into the stables. The application proposes the new building to the bottom here. Members will note the landscaping and the trees around the boundary of the site here, and the vegetation alongside the A49, to the other side. Access into the site of Nook Lane here. The proposal is for a building of steel frame construction and a green corrugated cladding. That's an indication of the plan site. There's in detail in support of the application in relation to tree protection. As members will notice, a number of trees alongside the boundary of the site. That's the view taken from the A49 alongside the site. Entrance into the site and the woodland backdrop. View from the north. View into site with, I noticed this has got laurel hedging planted on the side. That's the slides. As indicated in the report, the application is a resubmission of a previous application for similar development. The application under consideration indicates, as I indicated, the steel frame construction metal clad in green colour with floor area of 40 metres by 20 metres in footprint. 6.9 metres high to the ridge, as set out in paragraph 6.42 of the officer's report. The previous building had a ridge height of 8.2 metres. A pre-application advice was sought, and the applicants have amended what was originally submitted in line with officer advice. As set out in the report, the building is to be used by the applicants only, and if members are mindful to support the application, your attention is drawn to the recommended condition number 10, as set out in Appendix 1 to reflect this. in that the building is used by the owners of the land only. It is noted there are no statutory consultancy objections to the application, and this includes Shropshire Council's Ecology and Highways. Also, no objections from the drainage team on drainage issues, subject to an informative being attached to any approval notice issued. However, the case officer has considered this carefully in light of the parish council's comments and has recommended a condition is attached to any approval notice as set out in Appendix 1, and this is condition number 5. The council's landscape consultant, in response to the application, has raised some concerns with regard to visual impact. However, with consideration to further landscape mitigation, officers consider development on balance acceptable. Condition number 7, as set out in Appendix 7, reflects this. I'm just going back to the slide there. You'll see some landscaping, proposed landscaping to the south of the building, screen it from when driving along the A49. Otherwise, as members will have noted on site this morning, the boundary has a good backdrop of mature vegetation. There are no significant concerns in relation to residential amenity. It is acknowledged that Priest Parish Council object on the grounds of the size of the building in relation to its intended use, with concerns also about drainage. As I've already discussed, this latter issue is considered by officers to be adequately addressed with the attachment of the recommended condition. And with regard to scale and size, while officers acknowledge the building is large, it is typical of many modern agricultural buildings in a rural setting, albeit in need of further landscape mitigation in order to soften the visual impact. Again, this is not unusual with regard to buildings of this nature intended for agricultural use, albeit this is not agricultural. It is in relation to horse riding. In conclusion, on balance, officers consider the revised proposal subject to this application as acceptable in relation to private use by the applicants, and although finely balanced on landscape and visual impacts, with further landscape mitigation as discussed, overall, this is considered acceptable. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to conditions as set out in Appendix 1. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my presentation on this application.
Thank you. Yeah, I think my facts in a row at last. I won't read the speakers' names out again, and we'll hand over to James to recommence. James.
Thank you, Chair. As indicated, this is a statement on behalf of Priest Parish Council. Dear Sirs, planning application 23/04624/FUL and the amendments submitted. Erection of a building for private horse riding practice and associated works to include change of use of land to the south of Nook Lane, Weston under Redcastle. Priest Parish Council remain extremely concerned with regard to this application with its repeated submissions. Our concern remains, despite the slight adjustments that had been made to the planning submission, including a slight reduction in the height of the proposed building and the introduction of the planting of hedges around it. It remains a non-agricultural building in an area of open countryside, easily in sight of the residential homes on Nook Lane and the A49. Excuse me. It is also concerning that the owner has already placed additional storage containers on site. These include a transportable container storage unit and 2 smaller storage units close to the newly built stables. The land has historically been used for pasture land and is known to flood easily and regularly. The first planning application was in spring 2023. Priest Parish Council considered this planning application in depth, and our objections were submitted at that time, March 2023. Priest Parish Council wished its objections to be registered because, in our opinion and local knowledge, the proposed building as presented to be overbearing, causing negative visual impact, inappropriate for a non-agricultural building,
in open countryside, this remains the case. In November 2023, Priest Parish Council remained unanimous that it wished to object to the application at that time, as the proposed building remains far too big in scale, despite the proposed adjustments for the location. For this reason, it does not sit easily in the context of open countryside, and it cannot help to have a negative visual impact in this rural location. Priest Parish Council is also not happy with the highways decision, as Nook Lane is a narrow lane and the turning is tight from the very busy road, the A49, and the letters signed on behalf of Priest Parish Council Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we will hear from the local member, who will then move to the back of the room, Councillor Paul Wynne.
Thank you, Chair. Just to support what the Parish Council have got to say, we had a site visit this morning. Most of us was there. It's a shame we couldn't all be there. Most of you give apologies, but not all, which is unfortunate. But let's not go about that too much. I mean, today we went there in the spring, full foliage this time of year. So at 8:49 during the winter, it would be highly visible of this building, which is not in keeping a negative visual impact in mind in a rural location. This has been refused before, and we're tweaking it, dropping the height of the building a bit, and more planting. It's acceptable. Maybe not. Yeah, the Parish Council said most of it, but so what I'm trying to say is that anybody can go out and buy 4 acres of land for stables and a large arena for private use. I think we are setting a precedent for anybody to go out and buy 4 acres of land, put stables on it, put a big building on there, 60 by 40 building on 4 acres, where farmers would struggle to get that. Well, we're getting this for a casual building off a main road, and I don't think it's suitable in the area. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll make you just one more point. If you're minded to approve this, there is here a condition on if it's ever used for anything different. I don't know how strong we can be with this. It should be taken down. If it's ever used for anything else except horse riding or training, it should go. But if you could just back that up, you are minded to approve it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Just give you a minute to move to the back of the room. It's moving. I will bring forward Mr. Darrell Wright, who I believe is speaking for this as the agent. Mr. Wright, you have 3 minutes. We will start that clock from when you start speaking. Do you wish me to give you a 30-second warning, or can you keep half an eye open? Excellent.
Can you turn on the microphone?
Yes, there you go.
Thank you to the planning officer for providing the details of the recommendation. This application is for a riding arena for the family to train and ride their horses. This follows an application for stables on the same site. The building has been reduced in height following the previous refusal. The building is of simple form.
Can I just pause you for a second and ask to move the microphone a little bit closer? It's not picking up your clarity. Thank you.
The building is of simple form, agricultural type building, so fits into the landscape and similar structure you're seeing around the rural areas. Not many are screened by a full planting done, and a condition for the site to have 500 trees planted, which is progressing on what is a 3.5 acre site. This is accepted and contrary to objections from the parish council, and does protect and enhance the character of the area. Stables and paddocks for keeping horses and facilities for riding arenas can't be found in towns, so have to be in rural areas. The proposal will not affect community of inhabitants, and it is well screened and for those living in the rural area, and similar to those things from the rural area. Horse riding is one of those many pleasures the rural countryside can offer. Finally, the parish commented on flood risk. The building will be drained into the acreage that the land currently does, and it is not in a flood risk area or suffer from surface water flooding, and hence was not a reason for refusal last time. We ask that the committee follow the planning officer's recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, before I open up to members, Philip has given the opportunity just to come back with any additional information that he wishes to give post the words of our speakers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. In light of the local members' comments, first of all, I draw members' attention to condition number 10 in Appendix 1 with regards intended use. It's the last condition in Appendix 1. And secondly, I hear what the local member says about visual impact and landscaping, and I've got up on the screen one of the applicants, it's actually one of the applicants' photographs from the visual landscape and visual impact assessment, which indicates laurel hedging. Now then, I hear what the local member said in regards winter and with trees, obviously trees. However, I don't consider either laurel hedging is a solution, as that will draw people's eye to it. It's not a native species, and members will be aware of condition number 7 as attached in Appendix 1 and suggested conditions with regards to landscaping. It is my advice, if members are minded to support this application, that this condition is varied to look at wholesale landscaping around the site, because the laurel hedging, while it may well screen off, it also will attract attention, and it's not native in its species variety. Also, please note the planting of the 500 trees, which has been touched on here. That is also covered in condition number 7. Thank you.
Councillor Barrow.
Thank you. I feel this application is a finely balanced one, but I have to say I fall on the side of supporting the parish council and also the views of Councillor Wynne.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm agreeing with both the two councillors that have spoken. It is finely balanced, but one of concern to me is also the flooding. I have areas in my area and in other areas that I'm aware of are not highlighted on flood risk maps, but due to ditches and due to drainage problems in there, they do have problems. With the size of this building, and I note there has to be a soak away done prior to starting it, I am concerned about the actual area and the amount of water that will be deposited in certain areas. So again, it is a balanced one, but I think the building is too large for that area.
I would just draw members' attention to condition number 5, that there would be a soak away test carried out in accordance with ERE Digest 365 before any above ground works commenced. Gary, and then Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm minded to support this application, Mr. Chairman. There's no extra rainwater going to fall just because the building's there. Same amount of rain will hit the land that will hit the building. So if it's going to rain heavy and the land's going to flood, it'll flood whether there's a building there or not building there. They talk about visual impacts. The A49 is a main trunk road across the county. There are agricultural and all kinds of commercial buildings all along the A49, all visible as you drive down the A49. This is going to not add any difference. It's not going to change the character area in any more than it's already been changed as politics throughout of the years. So I'm going to recommend approval and propose that we accept those conditions.
Okay, before I seek a seconder, I will take a few other councillors. Councillor Nat Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I actually agree with Councillor Burchett on this one. I think the visual impact is what you would expect of a building of that size. It is a even though I know the actual land itself is being changed into equestrian, but nonetheless, the building is of an agricultural type. That is seen, as has already been mentioned, up and down the A49. So there isn't anything there that I think is going to have an adverse effect. But I would also like to support the comments as made by the officer in saying that the landscaping plan should be changed, and to ensure, yes, indeed, those laurel bushes shouldn't really be there. We should have a proper selection of native species throughout, and also, yes, I think but I would agree that if it is at all possible to beef up final condition regarding the to ensure that there is no commercial uses of the site, then if at all possible, I don't know if in this, if it is able to be noted that should the equestrian use of the building cease, then it should be that maybe a restoration plan could be imposed. I'm not sure whether that's possible, but I throw that out. But on that, yes, and I would second Councillor Birch.
After it's others.
Yep.
Okay, got that. Philip, over to you.
Thank you.
Are we able to, should this be subject to approval, beef up the recommendation that the building would be subject to a restoration process, i.e. removed if it was no longer used as a private riding facility?
Well, planning goes with the land. I think I'm questioning would that stand the tests of reasonableness. Condition number 10 it is worded that it's for private use only in relationship to the landowner. And I think there's a difficulty here with the fact that there's two dwellings. One of them looks direct into the site. However, they don't object the occupants of that dwelling. However, any commercial use there, in my opinion, would have a significant impact on the amenity of that dwelling, if I can find the full plan indicating them. Right, there it is. Where my cursor is now, that dwelling there looks directly into the site at the start of the building, and there's another one up here on the entrance of the site looking into stables. Therefore, there was an issue with this site with where to put a building. Officers considered the building in the location where, as proposed, was acceptable for the use it intended, but not for business use. Hence the reason for the addition of the condition. What's been commented on by one of the local members with regards to landscaping, I consider is acceptable, and I'd suggest that the landscaping condition is amended to reflect that.
And are councillors or officers able to, when we say amended, before we vote on anything, what would that amendment be? Because I do believe councillors need to know exactly what they will be voting on.
But landscaping for the site is wholesale, including the boundaries, so that we have it all up front. We haven't approved anything with the plans, notwithstanding the approved plans.
Right, so subject to the agreement.
Yeah, yes. However, condition number 10, I don't think it'd be reasonable to put temporary plan permission, because the application is for a permanent building. Okay. So I think condition number 10, I think is worded as strongly as we can, unless the sister has anything further to add to what I said.
No, I agree.
That's right.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know the answer to this, and hence the question. There is a reference about purchasing extra grazing land for the 4 horses, and there is figures in there of the grazing land that would be required by them, subject if it was for open grazing and no additional one. But 500 trees, how would that fit in with the amount of grazing land that would be required? Because there is a reference there about purchasing some land for grazing the horses, and whether you have that information or not, I'm not sure, but I just wondered what the answer might be. Thank you.
Yes, I did pick up on the comment that 500 trees. Like no the acreage that 500 trees would take, presumably they're not bonsai trees, so obviously we do need to be a little bit careful in that there are EHS, British Society recommendations for the amount of grazing per horse. But that's not actually in a way within our remit when they have 100 or 500. There are other agencies that take care of the grazing and potential neglect. Philip,
Yes.
500 trees. How much of the land would that take up?
Well,
Because presumably they can only plant it on their own property.
the officers looked into this, and there is additional land within close proximity available for grazing. And I can't find it now because unfortunately the officer was taken ill yesterday, so I ended up having this to present at late notice. But it is covered in the report here somewhere with regard on that matter. She has looked into it, and it was considered that the proposal as put forward in relationship to amount of horses was acceptable, and if necessary, additional feeding could be achieved. But this is for a riding arena. The stables have already been approved, so that which you noticed this morning. So it isn't that they're bringing additional horses to the site. The application is for the riding arena horses on site.
Roger, you've indicated you want to come back.
Last comment. There is a reference in the report about 50 houses, and also I remember reading about 500, but the applicant actually mentioned 500. Sorry, 50 trees. 50 trees.
Not houses.
50 trees in the report, and then 500. And the applicant did refer again to the 500 in their presentation.
Yes, but I'd like just before you come back, if we are delegating the landscaping to officers, presumably it's up to you to ensure there are 500. No.
Can I confirm it's 50 trees? I think that's an error. I picked up the report. It's 50 trees, but as the agent is here and is presented to you, I'd like him if he could possibly confirm that it is 50.
Yes, that's a thumbs up. Okay. I will give Philip a little bit of leeway on this. Jane Priest, who is the officer that has been working on this, became ill with COVID yesterday, so she's not here. So Philip, on top of all these other workload, has had to pick this up and do the best he can. So it's 50 trees, not 500. So it'll be a spinny-like thing as opposed to a Forest D type.
Can I also add? It's the error is in condition of the landscape condition, which does refer to 500 trees. It's a misspell. It's a error, and it should refer to 50.
Okay, we all got that. Understand that, Councillor Elmer.
Do you know where these trees could be planted? There's lots of overhead cables across that land, and that could be risky.
Hence my reason, Councillor, for not accepting food plans, that we have a full landscaping plan indicating all landscaping to be indicated. And obviously, if it isn't acceptable, then
I won't be able to commence.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, we can kick this around a bit. There is an existing proposal from Councillor Gary Burgett, which has been seconded by Councillor Matt Green. Gary, it has been a while. Would you just like to reiterate what your proposal was, except for the additional conditions, please?
I propose we accept the plan as laid out by the officers with the conditions that was just discussed.
Okay. Okay. All those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. That is 5-4. Believe. Is that correct? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, well, we now need to know.
We now need to know the reasons why it is being rejected. So, Joyce, you need to put a proposal forward now to go against the offer.
Well, I think the parish council have set out the reasons why, and I think also Councillor Wynne, when you're saying about the winter and the foliage, etc., counts. But I'm not sure quite how to put that into planning terms. Perhaps we can be helped out by officers by putting that into the right wording, or another member. Thank you.
Okay, so you are proposing that we don't accept the officer's recommendation. Is that seconded? Thank you, Roger. Now, right, you have got what the parish council said. Do you believe they are robust enough?
Excuse me.
He's shocked. Are they robust enough to?
I'm looking through them now, please. Not on drainage. As the drainage consultant was very clear in his response, he didn't even request a condition to be attached. However, the case officer did look into this extensively, and she put the condition on as being discussed in the officer's report, and attached as set out in condition number 5, was it? So there's landscape and visual impact. I'm assuming that is the grounds on which you consider it unacceptable, in line with the parish council's response
And the original application.
which I'm going to look at now. I've got it in front of me now. They consider it too big in scale. But is that in relationship to landscape, or are you looking at the amount of land, or what? The council's reason is does not easily sit in the context of open countryside. Well, as I've tried to explain in my presentation, I think it's typical of an agricultural building in open countryside in scale and size, a modern building. So I think that would be rather difficult to defend on appeal. However, I guess landscape is is an issue you could argue either way. We officers consider that the landscape in there is acceptable, but that is, I suspect, a grounds that you'd want to follow on with regards any subsequent appeal.
Okay, I've got Councillor Roger Evans and then Councillor Jeff Allen. We are at this point looking for reasons to support going against the officer's recommendation.
Through you, Chairman, in item 624, I think it is listed there. I'll just go back to where I highlighted it in the report. 6.2.4. Taken together, it is considered the above site of adopted development planning indicated in principle there is some policy support for limited equestrian development. However, such development must be appropriate in terms of location use, siting, scale and design, and satisfy general development management criteria and environment expectations. I do not consider that it satisfies it. It says it's got to be in there. It's some support for appropriate in terms of location, use, siting, scale and design. Well, then,
can I just ask if there are any members who actually did the site visit this morning that would be able to support what Roger has said? Obviously, Roger, for whatever reason, couldn't make the site visit this morning. So I think that's useful information, Roger, but I think it needs to be backed up by somebody who saw the site.
I will back that up. I would say it was overdevelopment of the site in a rural location.
Okay, Councillor Abbey.
And also, if I can add, out of can I talk about the street theme? Yeah. Or do you feel that it's sort of camouflaged by what growth there is there at certain times of the year?
No, Councillor, I'm very interested to hear what you're going to say.
Just said it.
Councillor Elder.
I was going to say, could any of the objections that we're trying to present be managed by conditions? If not, then I think it strengthens our objection. If they can be conditioned and controlled, then it weakens our objection.
Well, I think
basically,
I think the conditions,
landscaping, etc.
I think the conditions were placed on by our professional officers to mitigate what was there. So I think you can't really use it the other way. However, as it stands at the moment, I'm going to look over to officers and our solicitor, because we have to have robust enough reasons to reject the officer's recommendation. Otherwise, this will slap us in the face on appeal. You can.
I'm just reading the previous reasons for refusal, which I think still, which I think still stands. It was considered the development as proposed is out of context with and fails to respond appropriately to the character of the rural locality by virtue of siting, scale, design and layout. Now, I believe that to be true. And I think that's what you were saying, Councillor Evans. So,
as I said at the beginning, then pretty well much for the same reasons as.
That's what I said, but you're pushing for reasons, so I'm repeating them. But you obviously did not take that in, Chair. Vice Chair.
I suspect if we don't give reasons, that it'll end up being minded to refuse. That's why I'm pushing for the reasons. It's not because I like the sound of my own voice, or I'm trying to be particularly mean.
Can I just add, the first application was for a building 8.2 metres in height. It has now been reduced to 5.5 metres to the eaves and 6.9 metres high to the ridge. The previous one was 6.7 metres high to the eaves and 8.2 metres to the ridge. So what has happened as a result of pre-application discussions with the case officer, the building has been reduced to a height that is considered acceptable when taking into consideration the existing landscaping around the site, which the photographs indicate for the ones who weren't on site this morning. The ones on site would have observed, and officers did consider with the additional landscaping, as discussed today, that on balance, it is acceptable. That's where officers are coming from. So I'm assuming now members don't consider the landscape mitigation as proposed will mitigate this to an acceptable level, and therefore that is the main reason for you wishing to refuse this application.
That's certainly what it sounds like. Okay. I think we can keep fishing around on this one and kicking it around. I think we need to move to a vote on the proposal. There's, well, your proposal, the other one's already been rejected.
You need to read out a reason for refusal. We need to get it clear before we go to the place.
Yeah.
Through yourself, Chair. I mean, picking up on what Councillor Barrow said, and forming a reason, I'm thinking in terms of, but on balance, members considered that this revised scheme, as proposed, was out of context with and fails to respond appropriately to the character of the rural locality by virtue of siting, scale, design and layout. So in your planning judgment and on balance, having taken on board the report, the comments made by your officers, you still don't think it overcomes the previous reason for refusal?
That's what you meant to say, wasn't it?
That's what I said.
Yeah. Okay, so we will move to a vote then. We are now voting on the rejection for the reasons that have just been concisely outlined by the solicitor to reject the application contrary to the officer's recommendation. All those wishing to support that recommendation, as I've just outlined, please show. Those against? Okay, that's 5-4, so this application has been refused. Thank you, members. Paul, you can come back now.
What's the appeal cost?
No.
Oh, has it been on this?
And so it's very warm in here. I'm assuming there's something wrong with the heating because they've got all the fans going.
Only open to window.
There's no benefits.
I'm only getting here. 17. Tonight, well, just to let you know, Mr. Chair, I will be leaving now, although I'm 15 minutes until my due time to leave. I won't be here, I'm sure, to hear the conclusion of the next application, so I wouldn't be able to take a vote on it anyway. The extra 15 minutes will still get me to where I need to be.
No problem at all.
Thank you.
Vince, thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you. We'll just give Vince a couple of minutes to get out, or minutes.
Can't hear you.
Yeah.
That's your emails that you've got.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Vince.
Apologies to be leaving.
Okay, before we go to the next item, I'm not sure, can you hear me better in the public now by me speaking closer to the microphone? When you're at the back, I know I'm a bit deaf in one ear, I can hardly hear anybody speak, so if you bring the microphones towards yourselves, you can hear better, yeah? Right, okay. Just one point. You don't always sit up there, it's obvious to me sitting up there. Right. Item 6 now.
Can I just one clarification? How come we've got the big screen, but we haven't used the little one?
The big one's not working. We've only got a little one showing, which is
No, it's me, I'm sorry. I
illustrating.
Yeah. Great pity.
Okay.
It is a great.
Yes. Okay, item 6, proposed poultry unit, northwest of North Farm, Felton, Rutland, Montford Bridge. Erection of 4 poultry rearing buildings, 8 bins, feed bins, biomass store, an amenity building, including landscaping and tree planting. And Calvin's presenting this. Thank you, Calvin. Calvin, rather.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for the erection of 4 poultry rearing buildings, 8 feed bins, biomass store, and an amenity building, including landscaping and tree planting on land to the northwest of North Farm, Felton Butler. There are a few additional representations that have been made. There are some that have been set out on the schedule of additional letters that were circulated yesterday. I'm assuming that members have had the opportunity to read those, so I'm not going to summarise those anymore. That is in the schedule. Yesterday and today we've had some further public representations as well, and I'll just read out just summaries of these. They raise objections in relation to the inadequacy of the existing road infrastructure, concerns about the ammonia mitigation put forward, about pollution from runoff from the poultry buildings, about impact on residents from odour, about concerns about the disregard for the previous planning officer's recommendation, which was one of refusal, the environmental impact on local flora and fauna, noise pollution. There's an objection in relation to, again, road disruption and increase in accidents and concerns about existing potholes and lack of passing places, lacking sufficient infrastructure on the roads, odour impact, noise pollution for residents, concerns about odour from chicken manure and flies and the adequate road infrastructure, traffic routing, suggesting that a Section 106 agreement is required to ensure the upkeep of passing places that are being provided, and impacts on tourism. Again, traffic impacts and burden on highway infrastructure, noise, light, air and water pollution, odour and traffic pollution, and biodiversity loss. I think that those matters of objection are already included in the committee report and have been addressed as part of the assessment in the committee report. There is also a letter received this morning from the National Farmers Union, who expressed support for the application. And again, I'll summarise. They state the point that there's considerable investment in new agricultural businesses. Farmers will be able to maximise the economic potential of the land available, whilst providing local employment and adding to the wider rural economy. The farming industry wants to do more to improve river water quality, and they hope that the committee will acknowledge the importance of agriculture to the Shropshire economy and its work to enhance the environment and support the application. That's a very much a summary, but it's mainly, this is about the potential for water pollution and impacts from the wastes and the manure.
with the application as set out in the report, it's proposed that the manure isn't spread onto the farmland. It's taken off-site to a licensed waste treatment facility. So in many respects, the concerns over those matters raised by the NFU aren't directly relevant to the particular application. One further thing, I have referred in the report to the comments of the council's conservation officer. However, for some reason I didn't actually include their comments in the main part of the report. So just to confirm that they did acknowledge that the heritage impact assessment had been prepared. They acknowledge its findings and conclusions, and they have raised no objections, and they've just advised that a condition should be imposed to, in order to minimise and mitigate visual impact, it's recommended to agree material and colour finishes of the development, as well as surface materials for the lane as part of the landscape plan. And those matters again have been included in the report already. So on to the main presentation. The application's come to committee as it's a Schedule 1 EIA development, so committee consideration is mandatory. In terms of the location, it lies on land to the northwest of Felton Butler. And you can see on that plan it's to the southwest of the A5 trunk road shown in green. It comprises an area of arable land, and access would be from the minor Felton Butler Road to the east. You can also see on that plan that there is another existing poultry farm to the southeast, where there's 7 existing poultry buildings at present with permission for a further 2, which haven't yet been built. Next one. This shows the position of the. I'll just point out as well that the application has previously been presented to committee, so members would already have seen these slides, but I'll go through them again just with completeness. The position of buildings in relation to the site, and 4 buildings and the amenity and the biomass building to the northeast of the buildings. Next one. The site section showing the height of the buildings in relation to the feed bins. The elevations of the biomass building and the amenity building. Sections again showing the buildings and the feed bins, showing how the site access will be formed onto the minor road to the northeast with the required visible displays. And this shows the proposed traffic routing to and from the site, which will be the most direct route to the A5 and the Felton Butler roundabout. The next one will show the existing traffic infrastructure, road infrastructure, with existing opportunities for passing of traffic. It is a single vehicle width road. It's proposed that on the next slide that the applicant put forward 3 passing places, and following recommendations from the council's highways officer, they've agreed to put in an additional 3 passing places should permission be granted, making a total of 6 on that route between the site and the roundabout. This shows the proposed landscaping, which has got peripheral tree and hedgerow planting around the side of the site, an earth bund along the southwest boundary, and additional landscaping for ammonia mitigation purposes to the north of the site, which is in green there, making a total of, including the actual buildings, it will be 5.5 hectares of land taken out of land which would otherwise have received agricultural fertilisers. Onto the photographs of the site showing the access and the access lane where the entrance point will be formed. The access road would run in front of the hedgerow. You can see it on the back of this photograph. The proposed poultry buildings to be sited on the left-hand side of this photograph. And this one is a view looking back from the poultry buildings back towards the public highway. So in terms of the application itself, it originally came to planning committee last year with an officer recommendation to refuse planning permission. This was due mainly to the fact that there was insufficient information having been submitted in relation to impacts from ammonia, manure management and traffic. Further information has now been submitted, which has now addressed these concerns. Traffic impacts will be satisfactorily mitigated through the provision of passing places. Ammonia emissions will be significantly reduced through the use of air scrubbers. There will be the removal of agricultural land from fertiliser inputs, and these would bring ammonia levels down to levels which the council's ecologist would say would not result in significant effects on sensitive ecological sites, and there is a habitat regulations assessment included in the committee report to confirm this. There will be a comprehensive landscaping scheme, and officers consider that would avoid adverse landscape impacts. As mentioned, manure would be exported from the site to a licensed waste treatment facility and therefore would not be spread on land where it has potential for amenity and pollution issues. In terms of noise, the use of the fans linked to the air scrubber units would reduce noise levels compared to those included in the application as originally submitted. Detailed odour assessments have been provided. These have been reviewed by the council's environmental protection team and raised no objections. It's relevant to note, as set out in the report in detail, that the operation already has an environmental permit, and this would regulate odour emissions and other emissions through management plans. No objections have been raised by consultees, and officers consider that there is overall compliance with the development plan, and therefore recommend that planning permission is granted, subject to the conditions proposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, we have 3 speakers on this application. The first is against, Mr. Peter Ellis. Would like to come forward, please? You have 3 minutes when you start speaking. The clock's there. Would you like the 3? Well, you see the clock, so I'll be strict on time, but by all means, it's one on the right-hand side. Press it. Yeah, got it. There you go.
The many objectors are not NIMBYs. We already live with a 490,000 bird capacity chicken farm near us. This generates odour and traffic. This proposed unit is only 400 metres from the existing one. Traffic and odour will increase. Our quality of life will suffer. In 2019, SC Regulatory Services agreed, stating, given the existing odour in the area from existing poultry units, any increase in similar odour would have a negative impact on the amenity of residents living in the area. SAMDEV ND7B states that wherever possible, agricultural development should be closely related to existing farm buildings. This proposed greenfield open countryside site is about as far as you can get from North Farms homestead and still be on their farmed land. Why is this policy ignored? This application breaches this DEFRA booklet, the Code of Practice for the Welfare of Meat Chickens. This recommends new applications should be at least 3 kilometres from existing units, the protection zone radius for notifiable diseases like bird flu. 3,000 metres, not 400 metres. In fact, with other sites, there are nearly 2 million chickens within 3 kilometres of this proposed site. The committee report views this breach as immaterial. Post-COVID, we should take biosecurity and health far more seriously. Worryingly, US officials have reported that bird flu has mutated to infect cattle. Refusal to follow DEFRA guidance on biosecurity poses a real risk to all farms and the public. The River Wye environmental disaster caused by phosphates and ammonia pollution has been widely covered in the national press. The EA are being taken to court. The River Severn has been identified as the next risk area. Both the Y and Severn catchment areas have huge levels of intensively farmed chickens, with over 16 million in Shropshire. The application pretends that as all manure is going to an AD unit, there is no pollution issue. But AD digestate is still high in phosphates and ammonia and nitrogen and still has the potential to cause pollution. It may already be too late for the Severn. Yesterday, reported by the BBC, sites in Shrewsbury and Armbridge have been designated as monitored wild swimming sites. Campaigners are monitoring the water and are expecting the EA to rate the sites as poor with high pollution. It is wrong to look at planning permission on a unit-by-unit basis. A wider perspective is needed urgently. The UK is 96% self-sufficient in chicken. We do not need more sites. Please give a higher priority to the environment and the quality of life of residents throughout Shropshire and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Well timed. Okay, we have a local member now, Ed Potts. You'd like to come forward, please, Ed? You have 5 minutes, if legal.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and hello, committee. It's great to be at Northern Planning for the first time. We're excited to see you. I'm not against chicken farms, and my residents on the whole are certainly not NIMBYs. We do, after all, live in the chicken capital of Shropshire. Nestcliff, Great Little Nest Parish, has 5 chicken farms in the parish, with 2 adjacent to it. Today is the second Field to Fork conference taking place in Downing Street, and any members who have ever observed the Southern Planning Committee will know my thoughts on the importance of food security and supporting British farmers. However, as a local member, I have been approached by a huge number of residents about this application. It was submitted in 2017, a couple of months after I was first elected to represent Loughton. The Cluck Off campaign was certainly a baptism of fire for a newly fresh-faced elected councillor. It has for some reason taken 6.5 years to bring this forward to a conclusion, and as such, much of the original heat has died down, and indeed the parish council, I believe, has changed their opinion on the application. There has been an election in between. However, I feel it is important to raise the concerns of residents who have contacted me in the past few weeks and earlier on in November when this application first came before you at committee before it was withdrawn. The resident who has just spoken has highlighted many of the objections around the environmental impact and the quality of life on residents in Nestcliff, particularly the odour, which is prevalent across Little Ness, Great Ness and Nestcliff itself. Today, however, I received a call from a resident concerned about light pollution. He is an amateur astrologer, and the impact that this has from developments such as chicken farms in the locality in what is a relatively dark sky area. However, for me, the biggest concern that has been raised from residents is the state of the roads in the area. I know from a planning perspective, this is difficult to judge. However, whilst I have been battling with highways to get roads repaired in my area over the past couple of months, the Assistant Director for Highways and Infrastructure said to me that unsustainable development in areas such as chicken farms has caused the deterioration of my roads. And as such, that is the reason why they are in such a poor state, and I can't get them fixed for my residents. So what I'm looking for is from reassurances from the committee and officers that should you be minded to approve this, that should the Felton Butler Road in particular, which suffers from surface water flooding and a deteriorating road surface regularly, should this have an impact from the increase in heavy vehicles and movements, who is going to be responsible for ensuring that is repaired? I get from highways, they're saying they can't do it and it is planners, this is the planner's fault for approving the applications in unsustainable areas having an impact on the highway. But it seems tit for tat and it's going backwards and forwards. And it is my residents who live in rural areas who are effectively driving on roads which are akin to a war zone at times. As I say, I'm not against chicken farms. The location of this has caused concern for a lot of residents. Particularly, it would be much better suited if you closer to the A5 from an access point of view. But I fully understand that the land available is not in the ownership of the applicant, and I get those reasons behind it. But from my point of view, to ensure that my residents' views are taken into concern, I want you to look very carefully, should you be minded to approve this, as per the officer's recommendation, at the conditions to ensure that minimal impact is inflicted on residents who, as I say, are not NIMBYs. They live in and around chicken farms right across the parish, and I think it is important that their views are considered, and wherever possible, significant and robust conditions are put in place to ensure that the impact is minimal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have the agent now, Richard Corby. Like to come forward, Richard. Thinking how this works, you've got 3 minutes, got the clock there.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to address you again today. We're grateful, very grateful to you as a committee that we're given the opportunity to provide the additional information required to address the issues and reasons for refusal. As you can see, this has now resulted in a positive recommendation before you today. We'd like to thank the Planning Department for working to tight timescales, and furthermore, we would like to thank the ecologists. I've given them lots of grief personally, but I'd like to thank the ecologists for their work on this application. It's been to a very high bar to achieve, but the site has met with Shropshire Council's very robust ammonia and nitrogen guidance. I genuinely believe that these sheds will be industry leading standards with regards to neutral emissions and nitrogen and ammonia betterment in most cases. We've included the most up-to-date air scrubbing technology, reducing emissions and odour. We will ensure carbon efficient food, meeting the ever-increasing need for high welfare chicken, and ensuring food security at a time when supermarket shelves have often been seen empty. We're quite surprised to see some of the letters of objection, so not from the local people, but from more professional objectors, suggesting that Shropshire Council just follow the EA permitting lead on planning applications. We all know that this is not the case. I have sat here very disappointed in front of you as a committee when you have refused a very similar application on the basis relating to lack of information, as the permit does not cover the planning regime. Shropshire has a countrywide leading guidance on poultry unit that goes above and beyond any EA and Natural England requirements. We respect the views of the local objectors, and I feel that we've worked with the council to overcome most of these concerns. We know one of the objectors refers to an issue of odour, and we have worked with industry leading technology such as the air scrubbing unit that is going to scrub to 2 parts per million. I wanted to get that right, scrubbing to 2 parts per million to remove odour, remove ammonia, remove nitrogen deposition. This, as I say, will be an industry leading proposal. Highways, again, we've worked with the authority to provide passing places. The site is the location on owned land by the applicant. There's 6 passing places agreed. Routing plans, again, have been agreed to ensure that the route is the best way of accessing the site with significant, substantial improvements. I think with odour, again, we've provided a detailed rebuttal to the odour objection and have used best available techniques without going on to that in detail. The economic benefits to the proposal: the farm is a 2nd generation at North Farm, which is a family-run tenanted farm. If they're to stay viable for the 3rd generation, the son is very keen to leave school and run this. All of the farms in this area were dairy farms, and farms need to change, and poultry is where that's gone.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you to all the speakers, very well done. Okay, before we open it up to the floor, Galby, you'd like to make any comments on anything came forward then?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things in relation to the comments of the local resident. He referred to the fact that we'd said that biosecurity issues were immaterial. The report doesn't say that. It says that the matters don't carry sufficient weight to warrant a refusal of the current application. We're not saying that they are not material, we're just saying that they don't carry sufficient weight for a refusal recommendation.
Right.
And in relation to the phosphates, I think it's important to reiterate that in relation to the AD unit, the manure would be taken off site. It wouldn't be spread onto land. It does go to an AD unit. That we're not saying that therefore phosphates suddenly disappear because they go to an AD unit. We're saying that those AD units themselves have already been permitted, and so impacts in relation to outputs from an AD unit have already gone through a permitting process, be it either through environmental permitting or through the planning process. So we don't then need to consider that again as part of this current application, because then we're just dealing with the potential impacts twice. In relation to Councillor Potter's matters he's raised, in relation to light pollution, it says in 1.2, I think, of the report that the external lighting to the buildings will be downward facing and only required during bird catching at night. So there wouldn't be any light, just normal day-to-day operations of the site. I acknowledge the concerns about the state of the roads. The road is a public highway, of course, and it is maintained at public expense. We've consulted with the council's highways development control team on a number of occasions. They have initially raised concerns about the routing issues and about the highway capacity in terms of its width. However, they haven't raised any concerns about the existing state of the roads, and they haven't raised any concerns about the particular amount of traffic that will be using the public roads. And of course, they could have done. It's important for members to consider whether the public highway has or the development has sufficient capacity, infrastructure capacity to accommodate the proposal, and on the basis of the no objection from the highways team, officers conclude that it does, considering also the fact that there will be 6 additional passing places, those which would benefit all users of the road, of course, not just the operators of the poultry operation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kelvin.
Can I?
Sorry, Philip.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd like to further add. I'm a bit concerned about the comments we've made in this committee today, in this room today, about these assistant directors' comments on highways. And as Calvin's pointed out, both National Highways and Shropshire Council Highways, in their comments to the application, have raised no objections. Therefore, I'd advise members to disregard the comment made with regards highway condition in light of what Calvin just added now as well.
Thank you. Okay, I'm on to the floor. Jeff, you've indicated.
Thank you. Can I ask 2 questions, please? One is, I'm concerned about the comment about DEFRA guidelines. Have we considered DEFRA guidelines? If the recommendation is that you shouldn't have poultry units so close together, have we taken that into consideration, and why have we ignored it or suggested that our method acceptance is fine and DEFRA is not? That's one question. The other one was, and I know it's probably too late, the roads, 106 agreements, anything like that, is there any compensation to compensate for the problems being caused or perceived problems that may arise from this development? Is it too late for that, or could that happen? And that would therefore put to bed the concerns of Councillor Potter. Those are my 2 questions. That's the next one.
Well, just, yeah, thank you, Calvin. That's done for okay.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the DEFRA guidelines, these are referred to in 6.8.18 of the report, and we make the point that it is guidance, and it states that consideration should be given to providing the maximum possible distance between proposed site and existing sites to improve biosecurity, and that a useful guide is 3 kilometres. And it goes on to say that we acknowledge this guidance, and we also acknowledge that this particular site doesn't adhere to it in terms of siting, but that we do not consider that this carries sufficient weight to warrant refusal of the current application. And so we have considered it. However, we don't think that it carries sufficient weight in this particular.
As long as you considered it and taken into account, I'm happy with that one. Thank you.
And in relation to the second point about the potentially a 106 agreement, the road at present at points does have potholes on it. Again, I make the point it's a public highway, and it's a matter for the council as the highways authority to deal with potholes and conditions of roads, for example. And I'll come back to the point that there is no objection being raised by our highways development control team. So they're presumably happy with the additional traffic and consider that that can be accommodated on the current public highway in that location.
So we said the developers not responsible whatsoever for any damage to that road at all.
What we're saying is that if the highways team was particularly concerned to the extent that they thought that improvements could be made additional to the passing places, then other matters to improve the highway, such as through a 106 agreement, could be put forward. However, they haven't come to that conclusion.
Thank you. Okay, right, Gary.
Jeff, that's my question.
Oh, okay, right, okay, we'll move on, Alex.
I was just I was on a similar theme, really. Reading through this and also looking at previous iterations of the report, clearly this does an awful lot more to address concerns people have raised and goes to, I think, greater length environmentally, especially with the extra information. But the biosecurity point, I realise we've just spoken about it, but it does sit slightly uneasily with me that it is a material condition that carries weight and might be quite important, but overall, you know, clearly there's a decision made based on how important it is. I was wondering if there were any, seeing as it's basically the main sticking point, if there were any conditions or anything the committee could do on top of what's already been suggested around biosecurity, given that clearly that is probably the most unresolved thread in that report as I read it.
Thank you, Alex. How do you like to
Well, it's up to members to decide how much weight to put on that. If you want to put more weight on that particular matter, then you can do. Our advisor's office, of course, is that it is a consideration, it is guidance. The fact that you may be granted the planning permission does not therefore require the developer to then, you know, build out the site if there were particular concerns over biosecurity. And I'm not quite sure what conditions we could add, what conditions would be planning matters in relation to trying to, I think that strays in terms of, you know, animal health kind of matters rather than planning matters as to how you could improve biosecurity if permission is granted for this site, this location.
Do any of our consultees deal directly with, would people who have an interest in animal health have made comments on this and said they're fine with it? Or would they just not have been part of the process?
None of them, obviously the site has got an environmental permit, but I would expect that matters directly relating to animal health are dealt with principally outside of the planning process. Again, those are matters of operational control management, which are a matter for the operator to deal with directly rather than through the planning commission.
My only nervousness there would be that we could then approve the assuming that they're going ahead, and then there might be a serious animal health issue down the line. Again, I realise that's very difficult for the committee to actually vote on.
True.
I think the point we're trying to say is it's the same with building regulations. You know, people put applications to us. It's not for us to check that the building regs are okay. That's the next step once they've got their planning permission, and that's the point of planning permission. It's a step in the process. It's not the end point. So they have to make sure they do all the things that they need to do we can only review in line with the regulations that we're in control of.
I also,
Oh, sorry, go on to it.
I would also say that the industry is self-regulating on that sort of thing, and it would work in tandem with the permit. Site permit.
Can't hear you speak up.
The industry is self-regulating on health issues. It's in its own interest to do so. There's also there'd be a need for site permit here, issued by the Environment Agency. So those issues would be worked on cross-boundary with different agencies.
Okay, Steve.
Well, I think this application seems to have been like a ping pong match. It's been back and two, but I actually think that it's been for all the right reasons and to strengthen the conditions. And I can see that it has been strengthened, and I'd just like to make that point. Also, I was interested last week within this building, and this is separate, that the colleges here were putting in a mixture into these chicken sheds that take out 100% of the ammonia and the smells out of it. So I was very interested to know what you know about that.
Anybody know about that?
Air scrubbers.
Thank you, Chair. Are you talking about the air scrubbing system?
No, it's a pellet that sits on the floor. One of your colleagues was demonstrating it in the building last week.
Pellets on the. Sorry, I'm a bit confused.
No, well, I will forward it on to you.
Are you talking about the feed then? Feed of the
No,
of
I'm
the
talking
birds that might
a
be
mix, something that mixes in with the waste. Oh, sorry. I'm talking about something that mixes in on the floor of the chicken pens to take 100% of the smells away. And it's out to trial at the moment.
The biochar.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't know the details of it, and I don't know whether that is proposed for this particular application. But
I'm sure all chicken sheds will eventually take it on because it just does away with 100% of the odours.
Yeah, but for the purposes of this particular application,
No, I did say it was separate.
Yeah.
We can't comment on that.
No, you can't, but interesting points and bring it up. Right, anything else looking to speak? Okay, we've had several speak now. Do I have a proposal? Steve, like to propose something?
I propose that we
You
accept.
propose you go down for recommendation. Yeah, do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Gary. We have a proposal and a seconder. So we shall we'll go to the vote then. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. Seven against. Come on. Okay, that's
Abstention.
carried.
Chair.
Sorry.
Abstention.
Also use ten. Sorry, abstention. You should say that's sorry about that, James. That's quite. No, that's gone through. We'll move on to the next one on the agenda is item 7. Item 7, proposed dwelling north of Gareth Willow Street, Ellesmere, Shropshire. Just gather a couple of seconds whilst there's a bit.
Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, Philip, you're proposing your.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Right, do you want to?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application proposes construction of a dwelling with alterations to existing access on land north of Garth Road and Garth, probably known as Garth, sorry, Willow Street, Ellesmere. The site is located on a corner plot between Willow Street and Bromlow Road, being part of a garden to a dwelling known as the Garth. There's the application site outlined in red. There are no updates, by the way, on this application. The next one is the proposed block plan indicating the dwelling on the plot with what officers consider adequate landscape garden area to the rear and front of the proposed new dwelling, which, as indicated, goes into the part of the garden belonging to the property known as the Garth. These are the proposed elevations, revised from those as originally submitted. Two-storey dwelling. Floor plans indicating a 3-bedroom dwelling. Street scene. Please note, this is an elevated site along the road opposite the town hall. Thank you. And this is the proposed dwelling in relationship to its setting and the existing dwelling alongside. This is a matter also covered by conditions if members are minded to support the application, as set out in Appendix 1. Now, looking through some photographs, this one is existing Willow Street and the stone wall, which is retained, dwelling on the site there. Another photograph along Willow Street. And Bramwell Road. The application, as indicated, proposes one 2-storey detached dwelling as set out in section 4 of the report. None of the statutory consultees object to the proposal. This includes Shropshire Council Highways. The footprint of the dwelling has been amended since its submission as set out in paragraph 6.21 of the officer's report, and officers consider the revised plans acceptable. It is considered that the proposed dwelling is acceptable in relation to the surrounding street scene and will harmonise with surrounding dwellings in consideration of scale and height. I've already pointed out the height of the dwelling in relationship to the adjacent, and there is to be a reduction in ground levels as set out in the officer's report, and recommended condition number 5, as set out in Appendix 1, covers existing and proposed floor levels. Now, this I do consider is essential in relation to this proposal, given the site and its level in the surrounding built environment, and as indicated on the photographs. There's also recommended conditions with regards to boundary treatment. Condition number 6 and hedge planting. Recommended conditions 12 to 15 refer to public highway access details and gradients along with access construction details. I raise that as an issue owing to the concerns of the town council, but it is clear Shropshire Council Highways do not object. Residential amenity issues are considered acceptable as outlined in section 6.3 of the officer's report. It is also considered by officers that there will be no detrimental impact on the setting of the nearby conservation area. With some of the comments made by Ellesmere Town Council, as set out in paragraph 4.1 are noted, it is considered by officers that these issues are adequately addressed and, as discussed, with the imposition of conditions. And in conclusion, the recommendation is one of approval, subject to conditions as set out in Appendix 1, attached to the officer's report. That concludes my presentation on this application, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. We have 3 speakers on this one as well. So, against Councillor Amanda Weiss, please come forward. You have 3 minutes when you start speaking. Clock's there.
Apologise for my croaky voice.
All right.
The property we've changed our views on this application. The property has been aligned with Brownlow Road. Its entrance is on Willow Street. Its car parking area is on Willow Street. Yet it is 4.7 metres in advance of Willow Street properties. This should be a Willow Street property. The biggest frontage is in Willow Street, which is adjacent to the Ellesmere Conservation Area and should follow the line of the Willow Street properties. The property represents overdevelopment. It is far too big for the site. It is only 1.7 metres from the Willow Street pavement. The plot is far more heavily sloping than appears on the plans. The wall is at least 1.6 metres above the pavement height at Garth End. The plans seem to show the plot as incorporating the entire frontage of Garth, including the allocated parking for Garth. This cannot be correct and is misleading. This is where the 430 square metres is taken. The shared driveway is almost directly opposite the town hall car park, entrance and exit, which is heavily used every day, including minibuses being disabled to and from the site. It is also very close to the Cross Street Grange Road roundabout, which regularly gets backed up with traffic as a major thoroughfare through the town. Vehicles will have to no doubt pass the wall to get sight of the flowing traffic. The proposed property is only 0.9 metres away from the existing Brownlow Road property. There will most certainly be a loss of light. That property with a small area of single story is insufficient to alleviate. As the site is so sloping, a lowering of 0.6 metres is not sufficient to stop the property from being completely dominant along that road. As the site is the recent refusal of a similar application at the end of Stanham Drive, that was application 2305147, dated 24th of January, which is a level plot on a residential road, but was refused due to overcrowding of the site and a shared drive. How can this application be granted when there are so many more contraindications? Immediately adjacent to Ellesmere Conservation Area, yet there appears to be no Conservation Officer report. To achieve the street scene depicted, a significant section of very old historic wall would need to be removed, together with a public bench. Surface water is deemed to go to soakaway. With the slope on the site, it's difficult to see where this would go. Similarly, where would the bins be stored? Thank you.
That's fine, thank you, Amanda. So, okay, a local member. Jeff, you'd like to, you've got 5 minutes if you wish. Sorry?
Yeah, I won't keep it that long.
No.
Following on what the town council said, I as a local member have been approached by all sorts of people with all sorts of different opinions about this development. 1 or 2 in support, majority against. I'm torn about what to say. I objected to the first 2 applications, as did Shropshire Council, on the basis of the parking issues and the adverse effect on the street scene and the impact on the conservation area. And it's a great pity that big screen isn't working today, because the slope of that road and the ground level, I'm 6 foot tall, it comes to my eye level. So it's well over 5 foot, that slope. And I am happy that the applicant is trying to reduce and overcome these problems by reducing the land. And I think that's very commendable, but by dropping it by 2 foot is nowhere near enough. If we do support an application to develop that site, I think the land needs to be dropped a lot more, a hell of a lot more. The applicant has also resolved the issue of parking by putting in a turning space, which is good. So I'm happy with that. If highways are happy with that, as long as it works. The unfortunate thing is the site is a very narrow site. The house that's proposed is lined up with Brownlow Road, which is a 125-year-old estate road. But there's no consideration to line it up with the conservation area or the houses who are equally as old or similar ages along Willow Street. And I think it's wrong when you actually look along Willow Street. You've got a frontage of 4.7 metres or maybe more, and then you've got this property sticking out above your head, basically, sticking out a metre, just over 1.5 metres away from the pavement. So this property will not be in a straight line. It'll from the existing street scene. So I think if we need to try and make it into a straight line, it should be done on the Willow Street side, not on the Brownlow Road side. So I've covered the closeness of the property to the pavement. It's 1.7 metres. It's just heard. My other concern is the other side of the property against number 28 Brownlow Road. Brownlow Road house has 3 windows, 2 on ground floor level, 1 upstairs level. This property is 3 metres away. So they do enjoy, and I know you don't, nobody is entitled to a view, but they're entitled to fresh air, they're entitled to light. And the comments that we have on this report does say that, okay, there's going to be adequate light, which I turn around in my mind, meaning that there will be some loss of light to that property. And I don't see why number 28 Brownlow Road should suffer loss of light that they've enjoyed for 125 years. Well, not them, but whoever lived in that property. So that's a concern for me. And I just think the property is overdeveloped for the site. It's a very small site, as has been pointed out. The plan says 430 square metres, but the red line that follows the site goes actually in front of Garth, which is the front garden of Garth, and also the parking area, which is not really in the development area. So I would think that is over exaggeration. So in a nutshell, I think if we are going to proceed with this development, we need to condition it, if we could, to get it lowered. My other concern is that the report does not state that the conservation area officer has had what is it called, an HIA, Heritage Impact Assessment. She insists that this is needed, not being submitted. And I think one of the major problems is the effect on the historic area and the main road as you come into Ellesmere. That's, this is just going to be towering above you. And I think the building should be reduced in size. The ground level should be lowered. The frontage should be aligned with the other properties along the main road, not along a side street. Again, I agree, surface drain, soakaways, there's not a scheme being presented. It does say there will be, but it hasn't been presented. There's an adverse effect on the historic environment. What else have we got? We haven't got an impact assessment, as I said, the HIA, which, according to the conservation area, must be taken into account via section 16 of the NPFF, and I don't think it has been. There's an historic wall, which I don't know how old it is. That 5 minutes is up. Okay, that wall is not good enough if you're going to pull half it down.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you need to discuss and debate on what's the debate.
I'm going to say to you back.
You know, to back the room.
I will, sir. Excuse me.
Okay, we have now the agent, Mr. Andrew Jones. Would you like to come forward, please? Have 3 minutes before the clock starts. You can get a chair out.
Yeah. President. Okay. Thank you. We believe this site is an obvious plot. It is vacant land within otherwise built-up area within the town boundary. It has no real practical use, as although it is part of Garth, it doesn't relate to the house, which has a separate large private rear garden. There have been a couple of previous outline applications on the site, but these had little detail. What detail there was poorly thought through. This full application is completely different and addresses the reasons for the previous refusals. The application is before the committee due to the Town Council's objection, but I would like to point out that at their meeting, 2 members fully supported the application, with 4 voting against. So there's not widespread objection to the proposal. We disagree with their comment on the uniqueness, charm or beauty of the area. It is perfectly pleasant. The town hall opposite can hardly be described as beautiful. And the neighbouring houses was perfectly fine, a regular 1920s housing typical of thousands in the county. The house fits comfortably on the plot. Continuing the building line of the houses to Brownlow Road and will provide an attractive end to the street corner. Its design is similar to the Garth and houses to Brownlow Road, being built facing brick under a hip slate roof. It's actually smaller than its nearest neighbours and will also sit lower, but it is incorrect to state that it is out of scale. The proposed house will have a decent sized rear garden beyond the statutory requirements and will be retained behind the existing stone wall. And he's proposed to give a soft solution to increase privacy. Iris have raised no objection and understand that by widening the existing access and creating a shared turning space, we are not only providing 2 spaces for the new dwelling, but also improving the existing parking for car. We don't believe that the new house will unduly affect the natural light to its neighbour, 28 Brownlow Road. 28 Brownlow Road does have 3 windows with side elevation, a secondary window to a converted garage, a first floor landing window, which are of little importance as they are not primary windows to habitable rooms. Third window is to the kitchen, but the house has been positioned away from this window with also a single-storey element at the nearest point. The orientation of the house will also have little effect on the sunlight entering this window. In conclusion, it's an obvious plot. It fits, it works, and is simply a new house between 2 existing houses.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, Philip, let's come back on those points.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to point out the application site is not within the conservation area. And I draw members' attention to the comments as made by the conservation officer in response to the application, and to the comments by the case officer as set out in his report. In fact, there was paragraph 6.61 on heritage impact. And issue with regards detail and previous applications. The previous applications for the site were outlined with all matters reserved. This is a particular issue we have with a number of applications. This one has submitted a full application with all the detail before you. And while I accept the site is elevated, condition number 5 and street levels is vital here to ensure that it's acceptable in relationship to the existing dwelling alongside. The plans submitted to you before, and I'll bring them up to remind you now, indicated dwelling lower with the street levels as just suggested, and to consider accepted by officers. And it has officers consider it has no impact on the conservation area because of its location. It is considered by officers essential here to have conditions attached with regards to external construction materials to enable it to warrant to settle into the surrounding street scene satisfactory. Members will note officers have recommended conditions on construction materials as set out in Appendix 1, along with boundary treatments. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Okay, I'll open the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just clarification on the property, the building line on Willow Street, with the house being so far forward of the building line. As Councillor Elmer suggested, is it possible for the house to be aligned with both Willow Street and Brownlow Street?
Officers acknowledge it is coming out slightly beyond the building line, but on the balance, consider it acceptable. As pointed out by the applicant stated now, both dwellings will have what is considered adequate amenity space outside them. In fact, I'll bring the block plan up now. There it is. So number 28, you can see it still has reasonable ground to the front and rear, along with that of the proposed new build. And what was jumping a while. Which it is tight up to the boundary. It isn't up against the boundary. There still is space, but I do feel here the street levels are without doubt, as the local member has raised, vital here to enable any development to acceptably integrate into the landscape.
Steve?
Oh, yeah. Whilst I'm not in favour or against at the moment, just listen to everybody else. I know this site extremely well. I probably pass it every day a couple of times. But a much used term in this planning committee over the years is street scene. And as what Gary just mentioned, it doesn't actually quite fit with the street scene on this position. That's all I'll say at the moment.
Okay. I mean, I know this spot as well. It isn't very much in your face, certainly, but I do think it will be in keeping with street scene personally. It's just the difference to everybody who lives there or drives through there. You will see a difference, but I'm sure they'll get used to it if it goes through. Anybody else indicating? Thank you.
I propose that we go with the officer's recommendations.
Sorry,
I propose that we go with the officer's recommendation.
thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Joyce. Seconded. Okay, so that's it. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation? That's unanimous. That has gone through. Thank you very much. Okay, where is my agenda? Okay, so date for the next meeting, which is on the 18th of June. We have no appeals, unless you've got comment.
The appeals are being carried forward to the next month's committee when the enforcement team leader will also be present to give you an update on enforcement matters.
Wait 1 second.
Okay.